It's time to get your music radio ready with the Audio Skills Podcast. It doesn't matter what type of music you're creating or what gear you use. It's all about the technique. Get ready to turn your home studio into a place where your music goes platinum. Now give it up for your host, Scott Hawksworth.
Hey everyone, Scott here with you again for this week's episode of the Audio Skills Podcast. We've got a great show for you this week where we're going to be discussing the mastering process. Specifically, we're going to be talking about mastering in the box or inside your computer. And helping me to do this will be Brian Buckalew, who's a studio owner who mixes and masters for a wide variety of clients, and he's got a ton of experience and knowledge about mastering in the box. But before we jump into our interview, I wanted to start with yet another audio tip of the week. No matter if you're watching Audio Skills' YouTube channel, reading our guides, or listening to the podcast, I want you to have actionable takeaways that you can apply to your own music to get better results. So for this week's tip, I wanted to cover something that you should do in mastering and in mixing. And the tip is pretty simple, and it's this. Make use of A/Bing frequently when making changes to your mix. Now, if you're unfamiliar, A/Bing is simply the process of comparing two versions, one with your change and one without it. So in the mastering realm, let's say you added some multiband compression to your track to tighten up the low end a bit. Before you declare yourself finished and say, okay, this was great, actually listen to both versions of the track back to back, one with the multiband compressor engaged and one with it bypassed. And you can do this several times and really ask yourself, which version sounds better to me? This is how you can evaluate your effectiveness when you're mixing or mastering, which is something all producers or engineers should be doing. Whenever you make a move, it should be done to improve your project, and making use of A/Bing often will help keep you on track when it comes to mixing or mastering. That'll help you learn, okay, this is sounding better, I'm doing better, or you know what, I don't like what this did to the project, so I should remove it or try something different. All right, so now we're going to meet our guest for this week. Brian Buckalew is the owner of ProVizion Studios, where he offers mixing and mastering services for a wide variety of clients. He's been in music pretty much for his whole life, beginning with playing the violin at age 9, and he has his bachelor's in music production from Full Sail, where he was also the recipient of their Advanced Achiever Award. And most recently, he was the featured guest for the Audio Skills May 2017 workshop, which was called Mastering 101. Needless to say, Brian has a ton of experience in music. All right, everybody. So now we are going to meet our guest for this week, who is Brian Buckalew, and he is the owner of ProVizion Studios, where he offers mixing and mastering services for a wide variety of clients. He's been in the music industry pretty much for his whole life, beginning with playing the violin at age 9, and he has his bachelor's in music production from Full Sail, where he was also the recipient of their Advanced Achiever Award. But most recently, he was the featured guest for the Audio Skills May 2017 workshop, which we did called Mastering 101. So needless to say, Brian has a lot of experience in music. So Brian, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Hey, how you doing, Scott?
I'm doing good. How are things going for you? Any big plans for the weekend, or?
Well, we just had, it was my son. He turned 11 yesterday, and today was his field day. So we're going to see how things go. And I got some band rehearsals over the weekend. We're getting ready for some shows. So, summer touring's coming up. So got to get ready for it.
Oh, right on, right on. Yeah, myself, I'm going to be traveling back to Columbus, Ohio for one of my high school buddies' weddings. So.
Oh, good, awesome. Yeah, I got I got a friend of mine up there in Cincinnati for he's actually the singer in the band. So.
Right on.
We do everything over the internet, so he's going to be coming down here first week of June for some shows.
Right on. So, sort of shifting gears a bit and getting into our main topic of discussion, I mentioned that you were with us on our May 2017 workshop, which was all about mastering. And that's really the topic that I wanted to cover today. Mastering is one of those things that is so important if you're in a home studio or, well, any studio if you're making music. So, my first question for you, Brian, is for you, if you could describe it, what is mastering? How would you describe the mastering stage of music production to somebody?
Well, I mean, for someone that doesn't know really, I would say to the novice, not necessarily a musician, but just the average listener, I would let them know that mastering is the way that someone would take a song that was recorded and to make it sound good across multiple mediums. To a musician, I would let them know that, it's the way to get it to sound good across multiple mediums, as well as to be able to raise it to that commercial level that you hear most other songs at. In other words, you don't want to have your song be playing on a CD and you go pop in another CD and their song's twice as loud as yours. Mastering helps you get to that competitive level with other commercial releases. And really another thing is, I think about it like this too. Mastering is the last chance we have to really bring out the absolute best aspect of a song.
Yes, absolutely. That final polish, right?
Yeah, that final polish, that little sheen, that little gloss you put on, you can get to put on a mix. So those are all things that, in my opinion, mastering can accomplish or help bring together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, and you kind of were just touching on this in terms of being competitive. There's a lot of discussion about in the box mastering versus mastering outside of the box. And for those who may not know, in the box is, doing all your work inside your computer, inside your digital audio workstation, your DAW, versus, having a bunch of outboard gear. And, one of the big differences is a lot of the pro studios will have, all sorts of compressors and things like that where they are using to master. Whereas if you're in a home studio, maybe a lot of those plugins are going to be digital in the box. So Brian, what are your thoughts on the debate and really, can you get competitive results simply mastering in the box?
Nowadays you can. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that are screaming right now for me to shut my mouth. But it's the honest truth. I mean, technology has come so far. We are in a very unique time in history with where technology is. I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. We couldn't have done what we're able to do right now 5 years ago. We've come that far in just the last couple of years. There's a lot of companies out there. Their analog simulation of some of their devices and some of their plugins is just, the professionals will tell you. Yeah, the professionals will tell you they can't tell the difference between an in-the-box master and something that was done on a $50,000, a piece of equipment. I mean, it's getting that close. And I would offer this up also. Very few people nowadays, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but very few people are really listening on hi-fi systems. The majority of the people that are ingesting what is being put out there to the masses, they're listening on earbuds or on small speaker systems. And it's just not as critical anymore. I'm not saying mastering isn't important. It certainly is. But for you to go and spend all that extra money on an analog master or an out-of-the-box master, to me nowadays, it's just not as important. And again, I'm not saying that to offend anyone. I'm just trying to give you the cold hard facts.
Sure, absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. And, kind of speaking to that, that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for those pro guys who are, have been mastering for years and years. And if you are on a label or you're getting really serious about, what you want to do, there's definitely a time and a place for getting that pro studio out of the box mastering done. But the fact is if you are working in a home studio or things like that, you can get great results that make you competitive within the box mastering, right?
Yeah, especially if you're doing it all yourself, self-produced. I mean, if you're a band and you want to, like what I did with my band, is we did it all ourselves. We recorded it, mixed it, mastered it all in-house on our own. We actually did it from 3 different states. So we were never even in the same room for any
Wow.
of it. So it can be done. It can be done effectively. It can be done efficiently. And you can get to the point where your stuff can be played right next to Metallica. And people are saying, man, that's your mix sounds good. We're there. The time is now. There's no reason to make excuses. Get out there, start mixing, start mastering, and get great at it. Don't make excuses anymore.
Right on. Right on. I love that. Kind of connected to this, and I just sort of thought of this question. So what are your thoughts on those sites now? There are programs, I think Lander is the big one, that offer automatic mastering, digital mastering services. So you just kind of upload your song and it will automatically be mastered for you. Have you had any experience with that, or what's your thoughts on that?
All right, this is my question. Does it sound good? If you, at the end of the day, you use that service and what they give you sounds good and you like it, then why not? At the end of the day, we just want our music to sound as good as we can.
Sure.
We want, and I would never sit there and tell anyone, if it sounds good, but it came from Lander, then you shouldn't use it. I'm always the advocate of, hey man, whatever it takes to get it to sound good, even if it's the most unconventional thing you can possibly imagine. If it's the sound you're wanting and you are satisfied with it, then do it.
Yep. And the fact is in audio, the phrase, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as one might say, that is so true.
And if there's people that don't know what that is, Lander is an online service where you literally upload your music to it and it scans your song looking for algorithms that have been put in by the programmer, and it imparts a sort of mastering characteristics based upon that algorithm. So there's no one that's sitting there actually mastering your song for you. It's sort of a preset.
Yeah. And, from what I've seen, I've actually never used the service myself, but from what I've seen, I think that there are some people that are happy with what it gets them. Other people are unhappy. They're like, oh, that did something to my mids that I wasn't happy with, or whatever it was, right? So there, it has to go to taste. And, if you want to use a service like that, go ahead. Or you can, learn mastering yourself and work on that to kind of get to that. Folks who may want to be mastering for themselves. Brian, I want to ask you, what's one plugin that you use in mastering that you just couldn't live without? If someone were to come in and say, hey, Brian, master this for me, and you didn't have this plugin, would you be like, oh, man?
Well, I've done a lot of mastering over the years in the box, and I've done a lot of different plugins, a lot of different ways. I've used a lot of different DAWs, and I always come back to one plugin, and this is the perfect answer to your question, because no matter what I do, however I do it, I always come back to this one plugin because it always makes it sound the best I can, and it's Isotope Ozone. It's an all-in-one mastering suite. It's got EQ, it's got multi-band compression, it's got your finalized limiter on it, it has built-in dithering. It actually even comes with, if you go to their website, a great handy PDF, how to use Ozone for mastering. I mean, it's got all the bells and whistles you would need for someone that wants to do it on their own and really has no idea really what they're getting into. It's the all-in-one Swiss Army knife.
For sure. Yeah, no, Ozone's pretty awesome.
And I'll be honest with you, that's how I learned how to master, by using that PDF and understanding what the presets were doing. Okay, this preset, when I use this preset, my mix sounds this way. And then not just being satisfied with saying that's why it does it, but saying, well, okay, why does that do it that way? Why does that preset make my mix sound this way? And digging in and seeing what all these different aspects were in these different presets we're doing. So, and I am not a proponent of necessarily using presets as a reliant. I'm a proponent of using presets to learn from. Yeah,
for sure. And I am also a fan of presets for that. I think they're great starting points for sure.
Yes.
And then you listen and adjust and do what you get to mixing or mastering.
Yeah, right.
So here's a question. Headroom. That's something that I've made tutorials and things on Audio Skills where I'm talking about how to preserve headroom and create more and things like that. And for those who don't know, headroom is really important, because if you don't have any headroom and you send it off to be mastered, you can't go anywhere. So, Brian, how much headroom do you like to leave yourself in a mix before you go to master it?
The question is, there's an answer, and the question is really dependent upon what it is that you are wanting to master, the style of the song. Generally, I keep everything between -10 to -6 decibel full scale peak, meaning your peak either will hit at -10 or -6. It won't go above that,
Right. The loudest point in the song is going to hit either and anywhere in there, but not
your peaks do not go over that. And obviously, a heavy metal song, my peak would be higher than that of maybe a 10-piece choir. Mm-hmm. With some band accompaniment. I mean, it's just, you got to look at, you got to use your brain here. I mean, genre is going to dictate so much into your question, so mm-hmm. You got, once you recognize that, pull up a song from the style of the song that you're working in and listen to it and try to use that as your guide. But in most cases, -6, you're not going to want to go hotter than that with your peak, regardless of genre. I wouldn't recommend that. You're giving yourself 6 dB of headroom. Your mastering engineer is going to be very happy. And if you're doing it yourself, you've given yourself plenty of room to do all kind of things if your mix isn't perfect.
For sure. So now there's a lot of people out there at different skill levels, maybe some people just trying to get into this mastering thing and figure stuff out. Maybe you kind of touched on this before, but if someone wanted to improve their skills at mastering, they come to you and they said, Brian, I want to get better. How did you do it? What advice would you give them?
All right, first thing I would say to them, if they're wanting to master their song, try to think of it like this. When they go to master, have it to where it doesn't need any mastering. And by what I mean by that is to try to get your mix as good as you can. Try to make it to where everything is as good as it can be in the mixing stage. The better your mix is, the better the final master is going to sound, because the less that has to be done. Gain staging is key. You got to make sure that you're not hitting your stereo bus too hot. You don't want to be clipping at any stage. You want to leave that headroom we just discussed. And when you do get into mastering, master with small increments. Don't ever go into a mastering session where you're having to do 4, 5, or 6 dBs of boost in your low or mid range. Your mix isn't ready to be mastered if you're having to do that amount of EQing in your mastering stage. So those are some things I would start with, Get a good mix.
Yeah, for sure. Like I always kind of say that if your goal when you've got your mixing engineer hat on, as it were, should be to have your mastering engineer have to do as little work as possible. In a perfect world, they load it up and they just turn a couple knobs to turn some things up, and then they're done. And you should be mixing with that goal in mind.
Yeah, and I always say this to people: begin with the end in mind. Always start when you're ready to start on a project. Already know where you want to end up and work towards getting there. Obviously, if you're mixing a metal record, you want to have the kick and the snare and the vocals right where they need to be in the mix, above everything else. You want to have your guitars maybe panned out wider than you would some other instruments that are going on. Maybe your cymbals aren't as wide as your guitar. I mean, there's things like that you would want to do so that your kick, your snare, and your vocals are going to be able to jump out of that mix. Don't say, well, we'll get that when we go to the master. Do that in your mixing stage so that when you go to master, all you have to do now is just enhance what's already inherent in the mix.
Yep, 100%. That makes a ton of sense. You already gave us so many good little tidbits just there when you were talking about improvement, but if you could give, one mastering tip, what mastering tip would that be?
Okay, well, one mastering tip. Okay, I would say be sure that if you are taking your, let's say you've mastered your song, you've already put your effects on and you've mastered it, make sure that you are aware of how this master sounds in other, whether it's your car stereo, your home radio, maybe you've got a CD player with some regular speakers, put it there, bounce down an MP3, play it on your phone through some earbuds, maybe on some computer speakers even, if you can. I like to upload mine to Dropbox and then just go wherever it is. I got a computer or a laptop and just, download it onto there and listen to it with reference tracks that are in the same style of that you're mixing in. To me, that's always the best way to know if I'm in the right ballpark, because I'll be honest with you, Scott, this is the key. What makes a great mastering engineer a great mastering engineer? Most great mastering engineers will tell you their room. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, it's because my ear. I mean, some guys will tell you it's their ear, but they have a flat response room. Their room is not imparting any kind of audio qualities into what is hitting their ears. And so they know that their speakers aren't lying to them. I'll guarantee you this. Very few people that are listening to this have an optimal room setup, and they're going to get a lot of false positives out of what their room is giving them. Get out of your room, get that mix into whatever you can across some other type of reference tracks, and that's going to be the best bet for you to get in a high quality master, even if you don't have the best setup in your studio.
Yep. And just kind of piggybacking off that, I've met with like Grammy-winning mixing engineers who, have done a ton of work on mixing and mastering and things like that. And her name was Trina Shoemaker. And her best tip to me was, I couldn't mix somewhere if I didn't have my car, because she wants to go out to her car and mix. So that's someone who works in, pro studios with fantastic treatment and all these kinds of things. And she still needs to go out and sit in her car and listen to it. So, for those of us who are working in what I like to call imperfect spaces, a nice way to put it, a way to sugarcoat it. Those of us working in imperfect spaces, you need other environmental constants and you need other ways to listen to your music in order to get all of the sonic information that you want and not have what you were just saying, Brian, is your speakers lying to you and your ears, hearing things not as they are, but as the imperfect room is presenting them.
Yeah, and try to be as consistent as you can. Don't always be taking that fader, moving it up and down. You're gonna give yourself a false sense of what you're hearing. You're gonna complicate it even more if you're in a bad room and you're constantly moving the fader up and down. You're gonna really you're gonna make it your work almost insurmountable. It's quite difficult as it is in a bad room. You boost your thing up. Hey, I want to hear it loud now. Now you're going to hear a completely different sort of EQ. You're going to hear a much heavier bass. Your highs are going to sound completely different at a 4 or 5 decibel boost with your fader. And then if you lower it, and you're going to hear, oh wow, it just doesn't sound the same. Well, yeah, you got to try to keep your level as consistent as you can and EQ to that, mix to that, instead of, I'm not saying there's not a time when you want to turn your level up, but you shouldn't be making important mix decisions based upon where your fader's at. Here's another good tip. If anyone out there is working how I like to work, where for all of my clients, I normally mix and master. If they come in my studio, I record them, I mix them, and I master, and then they get a finished product, out their door. If anyone's like that, or they're doing everything, the best bit of advice I can give to them is give yourself time from the mix stage before you go to the mastering stage. Give yourself anywhere from 3 to 4 days to even a week before you start mastering that song or those songs, just because your brain is going to be conditioned to the mix. And you're really not the best. Your ears aren't well suited at that point to go and master something that you're so closely attached to. Give yourself a little bit of separation from the mix to the master stage. And I guarantee you're going to come out a lot better off than if you jumped right from one to the other. I promise.
Right on. I love that tip. That is a fantastic piece of advice there. And by the way, just kind of a side note, that can also, something similar, maybe not quite that long. If you're mixing, it can always help to take a break. If you've been working on a mix for forever, give it a day and then come back to your mix with some fresh ears. Never hurts to hit that reset button. So my next question here, and this is a tool that is used a lot in mastering, and I'm just curious of how you might utilize it, multi-band compression.
Yeah.
How do you utilize that in mastering? What is it that you might do if you're listening to you're working on a track and you're like, oh, I got to reach for that multi-band compressor. How might you utilize it?
Okay, if I'm in a situation where I didn't record the band and I'm just I was given a stereo track to master, the tool I'm probably going to reach for is going to be a multi-band compressor. Reason being is because a multi-band compressor is pretty much a combination of an EQ and a compressor. And what it does is it allows you to set up multiple bands that you can compress at different intervals or at different strengths. You can have a 4-to-1 ratio with a range from, let's say, 100 hertz to 750 hertz. And then you can have a 2-to-1 ratio at, let's say, 30 hertz. And I'm just saying it's up to that 100 hertz range. So you can set your band ranges and you can process them each differently. And how that becomes beneficial, if you haven't figured out already, is within a mix, certain instruments live within certain frequency ranges. Let's say, as an example, the bass is just too boomy. Okay, you can turn the bass down in a stereo mix with a multi-band compressor without even messing with the high end and without compromising maybe your mid-range where an EQ would. If you try to take that out with an EQ, you can try to do it, but chances are you're going to be pulling other things out as well. A multi-band compressor can sort of lower that how that bass is hitting without even re-EQing your song. And to me,
right,
that really just speaks volumes there because, again, you're not compressing the entire stereo spectrum of the mix, just certain frequency ranges. And that really is a very powerful tool. You can damage a mix this way, so be very careful. Start with some presets. Again, this is how I was explaining the Ozone earlier. Start with some presets. Jump around. Don't be scared to jump around with them and see how each one affects your mix, and then find out why they're affecting your mix that way. Scott, a lot of times what I do with a multi-band compressor is I'll literally just mix with my mid and a high mid range, and I'll just sort of use a multi-band on them. I don't really mess with my low range or my high frequency range. I want to keep those sort of pristine and clean from any extra compression. Most of our compression when we're doing in-the-box mixing, I'll be honest with you, is done in the mixing phase. Most people load their mixes up with compression while they're mixing. So in the mastering phase, do you really want to put that much more compression on your mix? So, and you'll be able to, again, use your ear. Your ear will tell you if you're over compressing your track. If your mix really becomes lifeless and you're really not hearing a difference between your loudest and your softest peaks, you're probably over compressed. Here's a good analogy. There cannot be loud when there is no soft.
Right.
So if you've just got everything just plastered to the wall, I mean, you got to think you've given no room for anything. Think about that. You don't need that mix doesn't need any more compression. Trust me.
Sure. Yeah. No 40-to-1 ratios slamming everything.
Yes. Yeah. It's already got to be given enough in the mix. So yeah, a multi-band compressor can be used for you can use a multi-band compressor to de-ess your vocal.
Yeah, for sure.
If you got your cymbals, maybe your cymbals are too loud in the mix, you can literally pull your cymbals down, just by using a multi-band compressor. So it's a very, very valuable asset in a mastering studio.
Right on. So actually, you kind of touched on something that we were talking about not over compressing thing. There's this idea of the loudness wars, where the idea is, back in the 90s, things just started getting louder and louder and just more compression. And sometimes a lot of people in audio lament that there's this loss of dynamic range. And so that kind of speaks to what you were just talking about, which is like, you have to have soft in order to have loud.
Yes.
Yeah. And so correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian, but I assume as when you are working on mastering a song, you're conscious of that. You're cognizant of wanting to preserve the dynamics of the track, and only making moves that are subtle if you're reaching for that compressor.
Yes. For me personally, I don't like really, really loud music. I'd much rather have a song that takes me on a journey from loud to soft. Dynamics to me is, it's sort of like a really good meal. If you've got a dessert, you got your entree, you may have a salad, they've all got they hit you a different way. You just don't have a one course meal. It's just this, now you got nothing else to choose from. So that's why I think it's so important to understand what's going on here nowadays. The loudness wars, depending on whose opinion you're going with, many people are saying that it's really we're towards the end of it now. The websites like Spotify and iTunes, they're putting in a sort of, I guess you could say, a ceiling now to where they're not allowing their mixes to go over, and each one's different. Basically, what it is if you can get a good monitoring plugin, I use Levels. It's a really good plugin. And then what it does is it gives you your LUFS measurement, LUFS, which is the loudness units relative to full scale. And basically what that is a perceived loudness of the audio information that's being fed into it. And when you are mixing a song, your ideal LUFS range is -19 to -16. And if you can get your mix in that range, then what is going to happen is when you go into mastering, you've given yourself plenty of headroom. You've stuck to that -10 dB to -6 dB decibel full scale range of peak, and your LUF is -19 to -16. You introduce that to a mastering engineer. They've got a great piece of audio material that they can put a lot of good things on, or you yourself can. And then you can get, at that point, you can get your peak maybe up to around -1.5 to -1 dB. And you can get your LUFs up to, let's say, make it a -13 to a -9 dB on the LUF scale. And that really is the range you want to be going for if you want to have a commercially viable mastered mix that will be given that moniker mastered for iTunes,
Right. Yeah. Could you actually, explain a little bit more about the master for iTunes, if you could, just, what that means and what home studio folks, ought to be focusing on around that. I guess you kind of were touching on that, the idea that like, well, if you're just crushing everything, things are going to get brought down anyway. But again, what does mastered for iTunes really mean?
Basically what has happened is, when you go and you turn, let's say you're streaming some iTunes songs on iTunes Radio or iTunes Music, Apple Music, and You've got a song that was recorded by me in my studio, and I completely crushed it to where I'm at 0.01 or -0.1, and I'm just like I'm actually got even a couple clips where I'm going over, because my digital conversion actually caused it to go over 0 decibels. And I present that. And then I got a mix done by a professional mastering engineer where he was much more conservative in his mastering approach because he knows the industry and he knows what matters most. And his peaks never went above -1.5 decibels full scale. Basically what's happening is iTunes is putting, I guess you could say, a limiter on everything that goes through their decoders, their audio decoders. It's called normalizing. Regardless of what your level was mixed at, they're only going to play your song at a certain level. And the louder your song is above their ceiling, the more your song is going to be lowered in volume.
Right.
So you, in essence, are better to go below that level so that they're actually turning your music up than to go over that level where they're turning your music down. And the idea is that so that when someone listens on Apple's music is they're not constantly having to move their fader up and down, you know?
Sure.
And in essence, what Apple has started is they've put an end to the loudness wars as we know it.
And when does anything you upload to iTunes get that mastered for iTunes label?
Oh, all right. Not all will, because not all of them will meet the requirements. They will not reject a track. I mean, you're paying to have your song put on there. They'll put it up there, and they'll let their algorithm crush it. You know what I mean? They're not worried about that. They just will not put mastered for iTunes on your music. What you can do is, I don't have the exact website, but you can go to Apple Music and you can download the mastered for iTunes droplet. And what that does is that allows you to take your high-res master, the higher the resolution, the better. Scott, I don't know about you. I normally record at 44.1 at 24-bit. I don't go higher than that. I normally don't. Okay, but if with the droplet, you can like put in 96, 24-bit, and they'll translate it down into a high-res AIFF file that will, or I'm sorry, an AAC file, which is Apple's uncompressed audio codec, is
right.
What they put onto their website. It'll create the actual file for you that meets their standards that you would then upload to Apple, and then that's how you would get the mastered for iTunes label onto your songs.
Right on, and I think we've got a PDF that we'll link to in the show notes here for those of you who want to learn a bit more about.
If that's the PDF I'm thinking about, that is an excellent read. There may be some things I've said today that you'll read and you'll say, "Oh, I see where he got." I've read it and I reread it regularly just to remind myself of some of the. There's so much information chalked in that PDF. It really is it's well worth having somewhere on your desktop or in a resource folder for you to go back over periodically.
For sure. So to sort of wrap us up for today, the last question I have, and I always like to end with this, though maybe it's not it is a positive note, because I think we all make mistakes, and I think learning what those mistakes are, that's how you get better. So there's a positive spin on it.
Yes.
What common mistake or mistakes would you say that folks who are either newer to mastering or maybe they're doing it themselves or just trying to improve, what are mistakes you've seen or you think that people should really avoid?
They're trying to make it louder. They think that mastering is making the music loud. And they don't realize that it's mastering is an art form. Mastering is the same process of writing a song. This falls right into my begin with the end in mind moniker I said earlier. Don't make mastering be where you're hoping your song is going to become great.
Right.
So the most common mistake I see that I even made it myself when I first started, I was like, okay, I got a great mix. Now let me just put this mastering plugin on it and turn it all the way up. Okay, great. It's mastered. You know, that's not the way that was not the intent for mastering, and that's not the way anyone should approach it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use mastering to try to get commercially, your mix commercially level matching. I'm not saying that. That's certainly the phase you want to do it in, but there's so much more that you can do with a mix in the mastering phase and just getting it to be very loud. Think of it like this. In mastering, less is more. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit, 0.3 dB, a half a dB, even 1 dB at most is all you should be doing EQ moves in mastering. You really don't need to do more than that. You're just sweetening the mix at that point. Just think about it like this. Give your mix a break. Don't, more importantly, give your ears a break. Master at low volumes. Don't master at the same volume you were mixing at. Once you move that limiter up to the level that you want to be at, man, you're going to wish that you had pulled your fader down. And that's one thing that I can say about mastering is you want it to be commercially loud enough, but you don't want to mix at that level. Pull yourself down. Yeah. If you look at Steven Slate's FGX, it actually comes in with a gain reduction button. It allows you to make all your EQ moves, but at a constant gain level. Even if you boost the output level, the plugin, the output that you're monitoring doesn't change. So it's a great way for you to know the exact moves you're making without thinking that the volume increase is why it's sounding better. See that what is that? The Munson
Fletcher Munson effect.
The Fletcher Munson effect. Our brain tricks us to think that louder is better. We hear the increase in the bass. We hear that higher sheen on the high end, and we think that that's better, when in actuality, we could be worsening our mix. And that's why Slate FGX plugin is a great one for beginning mastering engineers. If that's a plugin they want to go look at, it's well worth it because of that constant gain monitoring feature alone.
Right on. Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on it. Really think about mastering as sweetening and obviously getting up there and getting those competitive levels, but don't think of it as something that will fix a problematic mix, and don't think of it as only just loudness and that, I just want to crush everything.
Yes.
Because you're going to be doing your project a disservice if you do that. So that's going to wrap things up for our show and our discussion with Brian for this week. Brian, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me. Really, really informative stuff. And if you'd like to learn more about Brian's work, you can visit his site at ProVizion Studios. That's studios.com, ProVizion Studios. And thanks so much for listening today. And as a reminder, for links and more information about today's show and our guests, please check out our show notes at audioskills.com/podcast.
Ready to go even deeper with your recording, mixing, and music production? We've got all the info and techniques you need in one place so you can turn it up. Go to audioskills.com and access a huge library of video tutorials and private workshops so you make progress even faster. Come back next week for a brand new episode of the Audio Skills Podcast.